It's time for another match of Zerg versus Zerg, and what I got for you today is a game that I am playing at the exact same time as I'm also giving commentary to it. Now, I recently casted a match of Serral versus Snute on this particular map right here as well, which is also a Zerg versus Zerg. And Snute went for a rather interesting build, even though, of course, it was a little bit scary for him to execute something without a Baneling Nest. I want to go ahead and give it a try myself as well. So this is mostly just going to be a test. I'm doing so on the ladder against a high-level player as well. I actually just did a warm-up game, I think against the exact same guy, although he's playing under a barcode himself here. So, you know, I don't really know exactly if it is the same dude, but if I'm not mistaken, it is more than likely going to be the exact same guy, which means that he is a 5.5k Zerg player when it comes to the MMR amount right now. Anyways, so the build that Snute went for in that match was essentially focused around a very quick third base and then a very quick follow-up as well with a Roach Warren. I'm not entirely sure how well something like that could potentially work out. I mean, if you're skipping the Baneling Nest, of course, you open yourself up for a lot of potential vulnerability in the earlier part of the match. But he followed it up with some very cool Nidus network play as well after the third base ended up falling. And I think that there is a lot of potential in a build like that. So let's give it a try. Gotta go and put 3 drones in the gas geyser right here initially. I want to make a big batch of Zerglings here as well to, you know, send them across the map and potentially to get the council on my opponent's third here as well. We'll see how that is going to turn out, because of course there's always the chance that he will be cheesing me at this point in the game as well. It does take 2 to play a macro game, so I got to be a little bit careful, but I'm going to be sending this Overlord in that general direction. Going to re-rally to watch my natural right now. Going to make 1 more worker, and after this, we'll be queuing up our queens as well as 2 sets of Zerglings that we're going to send straight across the map. Also, I'm going to put some drones, or I'm going to pull some drones out of the gas here. Only going to have 1 remaining. We'll be getting ourselves the Zergling speed, 2 sets of queens, and then 2 sets or so of Zerglings as well. And I want to send those across the map as soon as I can. See if I can potentially do a little bit of damage to my opponent. So, putting the drones out of the gas, it's, you know, gonna give me just a little bit less gas income, but in exchange for that, I'm gonna get some more minerals out. May not sound very significant, but it adds up quite quickly if you're playing, you know, a lot of games. In particular in mirror matchups, it's very common for players to go ahead and do so along those lines. Now, he does have some Zerglings moving across the map here himself too, so I sent some links towards this location here as well. Try and see what I can do. Still adding on some more workers though. Don't really want to be caught with too few workers at this point in the game either. But here we go. His third base just went down. There are 3 Zerglings here for my opponent. And this is going to be some weird skirmishing here back and forth. Gonna try and micro as much as I can, and we do get a nice upper hand there. Alright, I think this is roughly the moment where Snute got himself that gas geyser once again saturated, as well as a bunch of Zerglings. I know there were some units here though, so I'm a little worried. I saw something move off in that direction. He may have to send them back home, which is fair enough, but I'm a little worried that he's got a couple of Banelings morphing in here. I'm not entirely sure what his plan is going to be. Regardless, we'll save up here for just a second so we can start a handful of Roaches, and I'm going to try, of course, to continue dealing some damage here as well to my opponent's third base. Sending Zerglings all over the map right now as well, though, just to try and see if I can potentially do some work, but I think that he may very well be focused on something a little bit weird. Gotta go for a big batch of Roaches here. Of course, just having more Zerglings here is not necessarily a good sign. That means that there's a good chance that he is going to be able to overmake a lot of defensive units as well. I did split up some of them, but that was not as clean as I was hoping for. Gotta be careful here for potential run-bys as well. But now that the Roaches are at least out, I'm gonna be able to use them here to hopefully defend this base quite nicely. Okay, following it up with drones. So I'm right now on 3 bases. My opponent is only on 2. I do have a decent economy here as well. And while apparently he is once again switching into a rather aggressive follow-up here as well, I'm a little worried for potential Baneling run-bys. So there's a good chance that my opponent can go for some Baneling run-bys in this general direction. I don't really want that to be the case. He also could be going potentially for Mutalisk play at this moment. which I also don't really have a good counter for. So everything considered, even though we're in a good spot, it isn't quite amazing just yet. I would like to get my lair started here. Like right now, we know that he's stuck on 2 bases for quite some time. What exactly is he gonna follow this up with, right? Why is he on 2 bases for so long, and why didn't he try to defend his 3rd? Let's have a quick little peek, see if we can potentially get some vision. Okay, he's making a lot of roaches. We're gonna do the exact same thing. I know for a fact right now that I'm in a good economic position. There's a good chance that he's gonna do a push here very shortly, so I'm just gonna start making a lot of roaches myself. Do have the +1 attack done very early on. Also, keep in mind, I can still go for the Nidus follow-up here as well, which I think is actually a very potent option too. I'm gonna put some overlords on the perimeter, because maybe my opponent is having the exact same idea, and he's trying to do the, the same thing at this point, right? I need to make sure that I get some vision around my bases because of that exact fact. Because I do not want to go down to just a random bunch of queens and whatnot spawning inside of my main base. Gonna go for that 3rd. Gas guys are there as well. We'll be starting up the roach speed here as soon as we can, which is almost done. Very nice. I'll squeeze out a handful of workers there to saturate that gas. But for the most part, I'm just simply spending my money here on getting +1 as well as the roach speed upgrade. Do have to save up some resources here very shortly once again though, to get myself the +2 started ASAP. One of the nice things that I really liked about the build that Snute went for is the fact that you get a lot of upgrades early on, and it allows you to be very far ahead when it comes to the upgrade count a little while later as well. Okay, +2 right away. And I think we're also going to make a move out right about right now. Now, my overlord spread has been a little bit atrocious. You don't want to spread too many overlords, but I've got like non-spread right now, which makes this very tricky. I'm going to go for a handful of spines over here, just in case of run-bys, which it does look like my opponent may be going for. And I'm sending a big chunk of units across the map right now. Where did the Zerglings go? Oh, they're still there. Okay. Okay, here we are, on the other side of the map. Gonna try and see if I can potentially cut him off. I don't know exactly where his roaches are currently located, but I would like to overwhelm him here if I can. Very good, got a lot of stuff. And it looks like we may have potentially caught him with his pants down, which is nice. He's got a lot of reinforcing units coming in too as well though. Trying to set up these concave, right? As we know, the concave beats the convex, although sometimes it's just a numbers game. Getting a lot of value here out of this earlier game, and my opponent is forced to GG out. Yeah, so indeed, this was a pretty high-level opponent. As far as the worker creators goes, and this is always a very important tap there, I think I just simply had those workers out significantly earlier than my opponent there. And it may not seem like a big deal, but for about a good minute right there, I was at about, 50 workers, and my opponent was maybe at about 36. Let's have a quick look at the replay. So I'm trying to think here why my opponent decided to not defend his 3rd base. And the one that I can come up with that is more than likely going to be the case is the fact that he was caught at a bit of a weird timing, right? I'm assuming that he was just caught at a big batch of drones, so he just made a big round of drones as well as a Baneling Nest, and he just simply didn't have the larva and the economy to be able to produce Zerglings. And secondly, and this is actually quite common as well in the Zerg vs Zerg matchup, sometimes it's better to let your 3rd base die if you're the player that, has his 3rd base under attack, if that means that you're going to be capable of building up that bigger economy on 2 bases, and therefore push with roaches just a little bit later. I think that actually my opponent felt a little bit weirded out as well by my build order right here, just because I played it a little bit differently than you normally would expect. Now, of course, going for a build like this, right, where you're skipping the Baneling Nest, it does leave you open to a huge amount of vulnerability in the earlier part of the game, in particular if there's going to be a heavy Zergling Baneling push, or maybe a +1 melee push, or something along those lines, right? But if your opponent is playing macro, like my opponent was in this particular match, I think it worked out very, very nicely. So initially right there, we had some cute little Zergling micro, gave me a little bit more damage in right there, which is quite nice. And during all of this, right, my opponent was making drones. So only just now does he start queuing up Zerglings. I think that he wasn't quite expecting for me to send this many Zerglings across the map either, and we ended up getting the kill on that base. So at this point, even though my evolution chamber was a little bit late, I know that Snute started that one up quite a bit earlier here, but at this point, I'm at a very strong economic position, right? So we are at, well, we are slightly behind here, but I definitely do have the eco lead because of that third base. Not only do I have the economic lead, I've got the supply lead here as well. I've got the evolution chamber going up quite a bit earlier than my opponent, and I think that the lair was done quite a bit sooner too. So it's quite a cool little setup. Once again, right, I'm very vulnerable against different kinds of pressure from my opponent, but it does seem like this definitely does have its place if you're, you know, trying to be a well-rounded Zerg player on the ladder. So right here, I run the scouting links across and I realize, hey, you know, I'm gonna be just fine here. So yeah, I got about a 30-second or so lead on the +1 missile upgrade, and the lair, I mean, my opponent's lair is not even started at this point in the game, right? Yeah, no, there we go. That's actually really cool. That worked out way smoother than I had anticipated. So I get myself an economy out. Now, what I tried pointing out while playing here as well is that I wasn't willing to over-drone here. The reason for that is that, once again, I knew that my opponent was stuck on 2 bases for a while. If I establish, you know, about 10 workers or so in my third base, that's gonna give me a nice little, you know, economic advantage, because I know for a fact that my third was much earlier than his. But at the same time, if I overmake the amount of workers there, of course, there's a push that my opponent could execute that can potentially, like, make me lose the game right then and there, right? So I had to be very careful. So usually anywhere between, like, you know, 6 to 10 workers at the third base, while having your main and natural fully saturated is a solid amount. After that, I just started making non-stop units here. And while eventually my opponent did catch up there in the macro game, and he did get an equal amount of workers out, it really mostly is just a back and forth right now, and at this point it's one of the easiest and one of the most classic timing pushes in the game. I finished up +1 missile. I'm just about to finish up the roach speed upgrade here as well. I'm getting 2 evolution or 2 spine crawlers right here at the third base rather, just to make sure that I'm not gonna end up, you know, getting banelings into my mineral line. I mean, at this point I had the liberty to afford something like that along those lines. And interestingly enough, I managed to get across the map. My opponent was not quite ready for a push like this, and we just simply had a lot more stuff, right? Even though we had the engagement right there as well, right? The concave beats the convex. I just simply had a lot more stuff there as well, and in the end, a lot of Zerg vs Zerg is just a numbers game. Not only when it comes to the amount of workers that you have, which turned out to be quite even, but initially I had more workers, meaning that over time I gathered more resources, but also when it came to these roach battles, I just simply had a lot more roaches here because of that bigger economy from early on, as well as the faster upgrades. Very fun game. I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. If you like these kind of videos, let me know down below in the comment section of it, because I'm always happy to upload more of these, but I'm never quite sure how many of you like these heavy, like, strategy talking kind of games, where I'm really focusing on trying to explain my decision making here. But regardless, if you enjoyed watching this, let me know down below. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright, and I will see you in the next one.